Hello and welcome to Daily Politics on Trust TV. I'm Hamza Idris. On Tidbits tonight, the Chief of Army Staff, Lieutenant General Farouk Yahaya, has directed all general officers commanding GOCs and formation commanders of the Nigerian Army to ensure a secure atmosphere in their areas of responsibility for the successful conduct of the 2023 general elections. This directive was given while flagging off Operation Safe Conduct in all the Army divisions and formations across the country. The Army Chief reiterated their commitment to support the Nigerian Police, the lead security agency in the 2023 general elections architecture. Commanders were charged to identify and dominate flashpoints in their core areas of responsibility, and troops were urged to operate jointly with sister services and other security agencies during the elections. Also, a 22-member Presidential Transition Council has been inaugurated by the federal government in Abuja on Tuesday, led by Mr. Boss Mustafa, the Secretary to the Government of the Federation. The committee includes permanent secretaries from various ministries and offices, as well as other high-ranking government officials, with 2 representatives to be appointed by the president-elect after the general elections. And finally, the Inspector General of Police, Usman Alkali Baba, has stated that the Oduduwa Nation agitators are gathering weapons and resources to disrupt the peace and electoral process in the Southwest region during the upcoming general elections. Additionally, the use of illegal small arms, political violence, cyber bullying, kidnapping, armed robbery, cultism, thuggery, and violent secessionist campaigns are all major security threats to the country's democracy, according to the IGP. He said IPOB and its violent arm, ESN members, are specifically targeting symbols of democratic governance, INEC assets, police stations and personnel, and other government infrastructure in an attempt to disrupt the general elections in the Southeast geopolitical zones. On the program tonight, we are joined by Dr. Salahuddin Hashim. He is a security and counter-terrorism consultant. We are also joined by Faith Nwadishi. She is the Executive Director, Center for Transparency, Advocacy, and Election Observer Group. Together, we'll be discussing election as well as the nation's security situation ahead of the polls. Welcome to the program, gentlemen and gentle lady.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We're happy to have you. The atmosphere appears tense today. I don't know. Faith, you've been busy since yesterday because you held a stakeholders meeting for the North Central. Maybe you share why you called for that and maybe the outcome briefly.
Okay, thank you so much. The North Central meeting was actually the 6th in the series. We have gone around the 6 geopolitical zones in the country to engage stakeholders in the preparation towards the 2023 election. And so we concluded that today with the North Central meeting that we had today. The reason for that meeting was to get citizens to understand the challenges, going into the 2023 election, and to know about the preparedness of the security agencies, National Orientation Agency, INEC, and all other critical agencies, including, of course, the EFCC and the National Union of Road Transport Workers. Okay. Then also religious leaders and other people, just gathering stakeholders together to talk about their role in delivering a credible 2023 general election.
And how was the atmosphere at the meeting?
Well, at the meeting, the atmosphere was quite good but tense because a lot of people complained about the fact that they couldn't get cash to pay for taxis to come. And towards the end of the meeting, suddenly there was no network. So communication, there was a little bit of communication breakdown today. And you could just see that frustration. I even had to go into another meeting. I couldn't log in. I just needed to find a way to get that. I had to use a wireless network.
In fact, my producer was so scared 10 minutes ago, saying whether the guests will be able to make it to the studio. I said, I think the implication and all that, and we are all into it. I'm sure they will come. Maybe I should come to you, Dr. Salahuddin, before I come, but because we're going to discuss what you discussed there.
Okay. That's
in our tidbits, you've seen the chief of army staff giving directive, right? What does that mean? Because many Nigerians were actually expecting that it's going to be a civil thing. But look at the directive he was giving. Why at this time?
Yeah, I think it is very fundamental to give those directives and launch those very coordinated operations to begin to guide and guard the election, because there are also a lot of tendencies that might disrupt the election. So I think these are just some of the fundamental roadmap as we go into the election, because one of the primacy of security of election is to ensure that the security of lives and properties are also guaranteed, because you cannot say an election integrity is conclusive without ensuring that security is actually on the component that makes the infrastructure of the elections guaranteed. So, and of course, there are quite a number of pre-election matters that also have suggested the need for security agencies to be on red alert, and one of which also we released a report recently that says that out of the entire state across the country, only 3 have tendencies of running a peaceful elections. Which means, yes, about 21 are on red alert, the other numbers on amber, and only 3 are green, which is FCT, Kano, and Jigawa. And incidentally, surprisingly,
FCT, Kano, and Jigawa.
Yes,
they are green in
the entire map. So it tells you very clearly that there are quite a lot of situations that calls for this. And of course, I also have read the INEC chairman said about 240 polling stations will be excluded for a number of reasons. And of course, some of them are also because of high-risk security terrain. And those are the issues we have raised pre-election to say, look, there are still territories that are not within the control of the state. So which means that there must be different layers of security apparatus that should be deployed at the first layer, and of course some of them at the extreme views to be able to provide some level of. But the fact also remains that some of the politicians who are the gladiators are also overheating the entire system. With the way they use words and their body language.
We will come to that. Yes.
So those are the issues on the ground.
Faith, during your meeting, I have some takeaways. One, you called for extension, right?
Yes.
Why? Extension for collection of permanent voters cards.
Okay, so the reason we did that was because of the experience we had from the off-season elections. Usually during the off-season election, INEC allows collection of voters' cards in about 48 hours to the election. So like till on Thursday.
Like what happened in Osun?
Osun, all of the off-season elections. So you have to, there's collection of PVC till about 48 hours. We understand the logistics and the challenges behind all of this, because they have to be able to also present to Nigerians the total number of people who have collected their PVC. You know, in the past, we have always based the total number of voter turnout on the total number we have on our voter register, which has always been a miscalculation, if you ask me.
So it's an erroneous calculation.
So because if you have, for instance, we're going to go into this election with 93 million people, over 93 million people on the voters register. If peradventure 20% of the 93 million people come out to vote, you will say it is 93 million people. But at the end of the day, INEC will release the total number of people who have collected their PVC. It is only people who have collected their PVC that are ready for the election and that will vote.
Not the 93.
Not the 93 million.
Because this is what everyone is going to the bank with.
Yes, so not the 93 million. So if INEC is able to extend it at least to a week before the election, they're able to collate the data, and every state will know how many, and local government areas definitely will know how many PVCs. It is one step of also protecting the integrity of the election. At the end of the day, this issue of overvoting or people not voting, citizens and observers are able to have that first data. It's more like a basic data that you need going into the election, so that at the end of the day, if you have, let's say, 60 million people that have collected the PVC, the total number of persons who now participated in that election will be based on the total number number of people who actually have collected their PVCs and not the actual number of people on the voters card. So the last election in Osun, INEC actually gave the two reports based on the total number of the voters registered in Osun State and the total number of PVCs collected. So that's why we are advocating that INEC could actually give, it's just about 10 days to the election. So if we give like 5 more days, that would be like a week before the election.
You relate with the electorate directly because you have your people across the country. Yes. You are one of the most credible observer groups, I know. But is it that you got some feelers from the people that there are some who are actually willing to collect the voters card and are unable to?
Yes, we had a lot of reports, especially for those people who did a transfer.
Okay.
Who did a transfer. We had cases of people who had to go like 2 times, 3 times, 4 times to be able to collect their voters card, even from the communities. Because we get all of these reports, and we also send out the report to the state resident electoral commissions or commissioners and the commissions around the state to say these are the complaints. So majority of the complaints we got about people not being able to collect their PVCs were mostly around people who had to do a transfer of their voters card. And another thing that we saw happen was that a lot of people came out wanting to collect voters card on behalf of other people. And it was not possible because you don't collect the voters card by proxy.
What about those that are abroad and they are willing to come back to come and
no, they actually they should have come back to collect their PVCs. You know, I think innovation is one thing that has promoted the reforms within that, but citizens are not yet able to grapple with that. Now, this last voter registration we had, part of it was done online. Yes. So a lot of people went online. Even people who had registered before went online. Yes. But by the time they were now going to verify and complete that registration, some people abroad couldn't come back home to do that because you needed to get your facials and other things, thumbprints, you know, your biometrics kind of to say before you can do that. And even some cases where they had finished that, to come back home to be able to collect their PVCs, yes, you know, was quite a challenge. And there were areas we went to and we got reports from at the onset of the collection of the PVCs. People were not actually coming out, but there were areas from day 1 to the last day. People were trooping out to collect their PVCs. You go, for instance, in Buhari, even in Buhari, yes, here in the FCT, yes, we went there several times to look at what was happening there. It was seamless. You know, it was seamless.
Anyway, there was I also collected case. Mine at Buhari.
Okay,
I went on a Sunday, so it was actually seamless.
Yes, it was seamless.
I transferred mine from Borno.
It was seamless. So, but there was a case of somebody who wanted to collect on behalf of another person, and when the officers noticed that, they said there's no way you can collect your PVC. In fact, somebody came with a list of names of people to say, I want to collect the PVCs of these people, and they couldn't collect that. I know that we are improving the innovations, the ICT innovations we're having within our electoral systems would help. People have suggested, oh, we should do it as we usually do our ATM cards. Yes. But you know, again, that you have to go to the bank to collect your ATM card. Yes. You know that you need to have certain data and statistics to be able to collect your ATM card, you know. So we will continue to improve, and that's part of what Saludin was saying now about the 240 polling units that people will not vote. They have also come out to say people have been migrated or sent to other polling units around, so just to discongest that. And INEC will be sending text messages to those people who have telephone numbers, who put their telephone numbers when they were doing their registration. Yes. So that's another aspect of the sensitization. But we found that at the mock accreditation that happened, a lot of people came out expecting to go out and be part of the mock accreditation, and it happened. Well, even on the issue of insecurity, yes, one of our observers in Delta State was harassed and beaten up. Oh my God. She almost got kidnapped for coming to observe election for a mock exercise. And this is where I want to bring Dr. Salawudeen, honestly. Exactly.
You have heard from her. Faith priority actually is for people not to be disenfranchised, right? And then to have a conducive environment for the exercise. As counter-terrorism experts, if we are to display a map of Nigeria now and put this 240 units. They will permeate the map, meaning where is free? Only maybe where you mentioned.
Absolutely.
FCT, Jigawa, and Kano. Are we safe for the election?
Yeah, I think it is quite circumspect to mention that there are going to be a lot of issues going into this election. And each time I mention this, a number of people have actually raised concern. I say, look, it is just because you need to look at the atmosphere and do some kind of climatic calibration of violence and do the meter. You know too well that all is not well going into this election. One is that in the southeast, there's going to be quite a lot of contention. And of course, I even heard that the faction of IPOB had also declared that for that week of the election that I was going to be sit at home. So that kind of apathy already has been generated. Of course, in the southwest, there are also some little bit of agitation that is rising because we also understand that some groups are also trying to ensure that, and of course, these guys have disruptive and of course destructive tendencies. And of course, it is not for security agencies to take it for granted because in all of these, there has been some massive acquisition of small arms and light weapons. And of course, one of the things we might see playing out is the activities of unknown soldiers or security men, because we also noticed that just weeks ago, there was a detachment of hardware that was actually also confiscated coming through the port. That is just the one that eventually ran into the hands.
Yes, because of how many unmanned borders?
Exactly.
Oh yes, exactly. So those are the kinds of things that we see, and of course these guys are going to be deployed into the system. And of course, you know too well that of course when you wear all of those military hardware, it is an easy passage into different areas where people can actually perpetrate evil. And another thing that also we must observe is that not everybody who comes out as an observer on the day of election is actually legitimately an observer. Because there are also ways that political parties have also been very creative in also seeing that area as a way of moving individuals from one location or the other, as a way of exporting violence. And one thing that INEC did this time was to put a control on the number that was allocated to most civil society organizations. And for me, it actually also further raises the deficit in terms of number. Where are the rest of those numbers? Does it mean that a number of additional groups have been further accredited, or there's been some kind of change in the way INEC is deploying its SOP on election observation? But Faith mentioned something very critical, and that is the issue of the register. And if you look at the register, you will notice that we must be very careful in the manner that we deploy voting points in every polling unit. If, for instance, perhaps we must prepare for that number, okay? Because that is the only way to also further mitigate the kind of conflict or crisis that might arise. If we don't prepare and we have the assumption that not everybody on that register would get the opportunity, and perhaps it happens, how do you control that number? Do you have adequate infrastructure to be able to help to ensure that everybody has a quick turnaround time to get that done? Remember, election will happen between a particular time. Accreditation will happen from 8:30, and of course, accreditation. Yes. So by voting generally stops at that time. Then with that number, if INEC relies on what happened in 2019 as a way to plan for 2023, is a recipe for conflict. You must find a way to increase in terms of infrastructure that actually relates to the end-to-end planning of the election. Otherwise, that in itself is an issue. The third one is actually the deployment of infrastructure, logistics. And of course, there is also the issue of a section in the society belonging to a particular loyalty to a political party. And that for me is also an entire ballgame entirely. Yes, we know that the entire NURTW has loyalty within the political space. And I always tell people that, look, you cannot for any reason have an influence without having something in the background that propels. You have some people who are going to be leading, but also have allegiance to specific political parties. So you now begin to ask yourself, how do you then look at the code of neutrality? So that in itself is an issue that we must take care of.
Fred, our second tidbit was on IG. He actually spoke yesterday, but we found it pertinent to bring it forward today because closeness to what the Chief of Army Staff said. He listed Odua. He called kidnappers, IPOB. Now, at your level, how do you look at this? It's like nobody is playing ostrich now. People are being called by their names. But honestly, when I saw it yesterday, I was curious. I said, Odua, they have one of the leading candidates and all that. Now, why this at this time? Because it's actually a security leak of sorts, which maybe the IGP, the Inspector General, right? Yes. He saw the magnitude of the threat, and that is why he brought it to us.
Okay, it's important that we have security agents, come out way ahead of the elections to give this kind of information. One thing it does is that you help to build the confidence of the electorate in the ability of the security agencies to curtail that violence before it happens. But unfortunately, one of the challenges that we have is that there seems to be a disjointed kind of communication between the different security agencies. Now, you know that there's an interagency consultative committee on election security, chaired by INEC and co-chaired by the IGP. We had a meeting across the 6 geopolitical zones. We had security agencies on the seat. We have been on the field. I have been personally on the field. And you go out on the field on the day, you don't know who should be taking directives from who. You go out, you meet the military, you meet the police, there's the road safety, there's also the NSCDC. At times you find them having altercations amongst themselves. They have not even been able to settle the line of authority within themselves. So why this is important that the IGP is saying this, what I expect is to say, to expect the IGP to say, we are on top of the issue. This is what has happened, this is what has happened.
Yes.
But instead of sounding an alarm around that, assure Nigerians that you are on top of the issue and are able to deal with it. For instance, we're just giving an example of a polling unit, one in Delta State, where an observer was harassed, manhandled, her phone was seized, the pictures on her phone deleted, and she was told specifically that they will send her the kind of pictures on a mock. We expect that by now the police or security agencies would have gone to that polling unit, done an investigation and marked that place. Because the shocking aspect of that was that the young lady who went to that place, the police officers who were there did nothing to intervene when she was being harassed. In fact, after the harassment, she was saved by the community leaders. The police officers came there and told her that this place, so we only came as observers.
Can you imagine?
We cannot do anything. Have you not heard of this place? That is to tell you that that place is a hotbed. By now, we expect the security agencies to bring out the flashpoints, tell us what is happening. Because I tell you, it is not all the time you see security agents at polling units and all of these things are happening. The 240 polling units he mentioned, 38 of them are in Imo State. 36 of them are in Taraba State.
These are serious. These are
36
serious
of them.
issues. Yes, fair.
And then in Kogi State, you have 0. But we remember the experience we had in the last Kogi election. And you have 0 in Kogi State, where it means that all the polling units in Kogi State, there will be election happening there. So we like this kind of information, but it would have been better for the IGP to assure us and reassure us that they are on top of it and that they are handling it.
Thank you very much. A lot to talk on the security. We'll go on a short break, and when we return, the conversation continues. Don't go away.
Ina kake dan Najeriya? Baka da labarin Jagaba Ahmad Bola Tinubu a yanzu shike gaba kan gaba a cikin 'yan takara a ƙasar Najeriya dake da sassanin asalin sanin mukaman mulki da kuma samun da waraka ga rayuwar al'ummar Najeriya. Jagaba shike da sassanin asalin sanin hanyoyin tattalin arzikin ƙasa a Najeriya. Jagaba Bola Ahmad Tinubu magabata suka ce shi a ƙwararren direban da zai ceto rayuwar al'ummar Najeriya a shekara ta 2023. Ya batun dawo da martabar ilimi, noma, kiwo da batun tsaro a Najeriya, ya game da samarwa matasa ayyukan yi maganin fatara da zaman kashe wando. Haka ina ga batun daidaito a tsakanin kabilu da mabiya addini daban daban-daban a ƙasa Najeriya nan ma magabata suka ce jagaba shi ke kan gaba. To yanzu dan masani ina mafita hanya tsani domin a barje a baya? Amsar dai ita ce jagaba Bola Ahmed Tinubu shine kan kat cikin dubun dubatan yan takara a Najeriya da ke neman shugabancin ƙasa daga kanshi sai dai ka sha mafa.
Wannan sako ne daga sashen tsare-tsare da sadarwa na kwamitin yakin neman zaben shugaban ƙasa na jam'iyyar APC.
Mu da Allah mu ne gaba. Jagaba shi
Welcome back. If you are just joining us, this is Daily Politics on Trust TV. We have in the studio Dr. Salahuddin Hashim, a counter-terrorism expert, and Faith Wadishi from Center for Transparency Advocacy. Dr. Salahuddin, are we now expecting a militarized election going by, you know, the cry of war across the country?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that you cannot divorce is that in some pessimist environment, it is always adduced that you cannot have a free, fair, and of course peaceful election. That election obviously must come with some level of contestation. But of course, this time around, you are likely going to have some level of militarized electoral process.
Right?
Obviously,
not because they want to be out.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, if that does not happen, there are going to be the potentials that a number of locations will be cancelled because of violence. And of course, it then means that the entire integrity of the elections would also be put to question, which means that we might also be losing resources. One of the things that the security agencies must do at this point, first is the issue of human intelligence. Intelligence gathering is very fundamental, and it helps us to be able to apply and deploy some kind of a non-kinetic approach. Soft approach that help us to be able to mitigate all of these risks that we have identified. Because if we don't do that, tendencies are there that we want to use the hardware and that in itself will cause resistance. And when you have resistance, that is where you have people who already have a lineage of righteous anger, okay, against the system, against the entire country, against those who are in. And of course, you know too well that there is also a new dimension to this election. You have a set of young people who believe that they want to reclaim Nigeria. Okay, wow. So that young people would have in their blood some sort of a plasma
serious
running for ensuring that if it doesn't go the way they expect, what we saw in NSAS might just be a child's play. So it is very important that intelligence at this time should have been high, and of course the police in their situation room, if they already configured one, the Nigerian army should also have configured one. Maybe they should also have a joint situation room, just like Fred had mentioned, the ISIS, and of course the issue of rivalry. People should put rivalry at this point in the backdrop and work together, because you need to rescue the country at this point out of
all right. I want you to come in at your consultative meeting. Something came up from the REC in the FCT, right? We have the report from there. Let's have a look at it.
The FCT REC, Yaya Bello, said the scarcity of Naira, which makes cash unavailable, is one of the challenges the Commission is facing, though it is not peculiar with the FCT. He ever reassured stakeholders that the Commission's chairman is meeting with all available stakeholders to make sure the problem is solved ahead of the elections.
The Commission has made a lot of preparations. You know, a lot of the materials we needed, we already got them. We have done some trainings. We are doing more trainings. You know, we have made a lot of consultation with stakeholders. We have moved, you know, a lot of materials and batched them to the area councils, you know, which is the local government level. When you talk about the challenge, believe me sincerely, the challenge to this election, you know, as we are going about now, you know, in the FCT, and by and large, I believe all over the nation, is a cash policy.
Is to have an interaction with the main stakeholders in the electoral circle, for instance, security agents, religious leaders, the political class, and voters themselves, including INEC, to judge on the preparation towards the election. Now, this is one of the activities we embarked on as an organization across the 6 6 geopolitical zone. Luckily for us, this is the last and the final one that we're having. And it seems that the reports we're getting and feelers we're getting from all of the zones seem to be the same thing. Citizens are concerned about their security. Citizens are concerned about the role of the political class in ensuring that when they come out on election day, that their votes will count.
The meeting provided opportunity for stakeholders to discuss problems and profile solutions.
It's a mandate to me, as in it's an opportunity for me, especially.
Yes, Fed, that was your program. But what caught my attention, of course, the statement by the Yahaya Bello, right, the INEC commissioner in FCT, about how deep is actually the concern that lack of cash will maybe make nonsense of all what people have been planning for over time, going by what the CBN. Okay,
so the other part of his analysis of that cash problem that we didn't see online was that, you know, on election day you have to deploy ad hoc staff to rack centers. And when they are going there, you need to give them some cash. There's some people who have to go to communities. They need to buy food. They need to buy some things within the community.
And some will pay for the canoe.
Yes.
Some will pay for donkeys.
So he said that they will have to give them cash, at least 5,000 naira. Now, if that cash is not available to give them,
which is not as we speak now,
a lot of them may not want to go out to do that. And apart from even the ad hoc staff, he also mentioned the security agency personnel that will be given, even if it is 1,000 or 2,000 naira cash on that day, just to keep that for themselves in case of any emergency. Now, if that cash is not available, how do you, for instance, give check to an ad hoc staff who will be deployed to a community, or say I'm posting money to your account and go and look for ATM.
And look at it today, you could not make transfer.
I'm telling you now.
Dr. Salahuddin could not make transfer. I could not.
In fact, let me tell you right now, Nigeria Naira.
The network was even off.
The exchange rate for Naira now is the highest in the world. Naira to Naira exchange rate is higher anywhere in the world. The Naira is higher than the dollar exchange rate. So you want to collect, 3 weeks ago, we went to Gombe for the Northeast meeting.
Yes.
To get 100,000 naira, we had to pay 10,000.
Yeah.
At that time, it was still 10%.
Yeah.
Now it's almost 20%.
Now it's more than. It's more than. I was going to Nyanya the other day to collect 30,000. I was asked to pay 6,000 naira. A staff of mine was to collect 5,000. She was asked to bring 1,500 for 5,000 naira. So, do you now send 5,000 naira to an ad hoc staff, a youth corps member, or a graduate for that matter, somebody that has been deployed to a certain community, and you are saying, take this money and go and do that? I guess that was the wisdom behind why the INEC chairman had to meet with the central bank governor.
Dr. Salahuddin, INEC chairman, that's what I wanted to say. He met with INEC chairman over a week now, right?
Yes,
or about a week.
Governor, yes.
Now, a resident electoral commissioner is anchoring what the INEC chairman. Some people have started alleging that, of course, there is sabotage somewhere. Because if this continues, election will not likely hold in Nigeria. What is your take on this?
No, I mean, the fact is that you are likely going to have a lot of distortion in the entire value chain because our economy is heavily cash dependent. And you are likely going to see situations where certain logistics will not be able to be deployed. You cannot give on election day an NURTW driver check or transfer. He wants to see his money in cash.
So that he will even buy fuel.
Exactly. So this is actually one of the issues. My point generally around this issue was it could have happened. The timing was wrong. It was ill-timed, and of course there was no those who decided on this didn't see it on a sofa of knowledge to be able to determine the consequences. We knew the advantage this was going to be. We knew it has some value to the economy, to security, and of course. But the fact was that you could have actually done this when it is due, not in the election. So the timing was.
Thank you very much. We are going for another break. Viewers, don't go away, please. We'll be back shortly.
Haruna, Bisi, Akman, Unduka, how I want to do on election day? On election day, I go take my PVC. When I reach where I vote to, Na broom I go put my hand for Tinubu. On election day, I go take my PVC. When I reach where I dey vote to, na broom I go put my hand for Tinubu.
People of Nigeria, make we all come out on election day and vote Asiwaju Bola Tinubu as president. Make Nigeria for better. Make you put your hand for APC, the party wey show broom. No forget oh, na broom you go put your hand in. Bam!
On election day, I go take my PVC. When I reach where I dey vote to, na broom I go put my hand for Tinubu.
Welcome back. If you are just joining us, you are watching Daily Politics on Trust TV. Do well to follow the conversation across our social platforms on Facebook, Twitter, and watch us live on YouTube. We are still with Faith Wadishi from CTA and Dr. Salahuddin Hashim, counterterrorism expert. Faith, I want us to go back to the mock accreditation, right? Because you discussed this at the forum. What is actually the reception on BIVAS? Do people really understand how it works? Is it worth it?
Yeah, it's worth it, if you ask me. And a lot of Nigerians think also that it's worth it. That's the report we got back from the field. And I must say and commend INEC that the BIVAS has worked better, much better than it has worked in the past. But the only problem we had in some of the states was that citizens came out thinking that they were going to use the BIVAS as an electronic device to cast their vote. Now, this is where misinformation and disinformation plays a role. Remember that there was this viral video that went on where people thought, and that video actually came out even before the 2019 election. It was a video of the election of the local government in Kaduna State prior to the 2019 election. So now, coming to 2023 election, people started recirculating that video again, and people were hoping...
Is it malinformation or disinformation or fake news?
It's just fake news, you understand that? So some of the polling units we went to, some came out and found out that, oh, so they have to now go do the manual voting. They were not going to vote with the BIVAS. So there was this was another opportunity to educate the citizens on the importance of BIVAS. One other critical thing that came out was another information that came out recently, that people will copy the last 5 digits of their VIN and they will go to vote. So people were afraid that, oh, this mock accreditation that we're going to do, INEC officials want to collect their number so that they can come out to vote on election day. You know, so, and it was good that that mock exercise happened to open up people's eyes and to show how prepared INEC is on the day of election. But again, the weak link, I keep saying that the weak link in the reforms we have had over the years in our electoral process is still with the political class. It's still, they are the overall beneficiaries of the entire process, but they are the ones who are not making any effort to make it better. They still want people to go back those olden days where people use the palm kernel, they use the thumb, the toes to print the incident form, you know. And then remember there was one time in this country, I was an observer in Delta State, and we were just still on the field when they called us to say that the Delta State result had been declared in Abuja. Wow. And the election was still going on. So now the BIVAS has come as a game changer. But you know that for every innovation, for everything that you want to do, there are people who don't want it to succeed. Who don't want it to succeed. The first time we had an inkling that the political class was going to say something bad about the BIVAS was after the FCT local government elections. Okay. On the day the certificate of returns were given to people, a very prominent person in government said, oh, you know, why don't you go back to the days of incidents form?
Oh my God.
Go back to the days of incidents.
Because you couldn't have
I am happy. Yeah. I'm very happy that on that day, Nigerians who were there booed that government official. And we have increasingly seen the progress we're making. Let us not get it twisted. BIVAS is a game changer in our elections, whether people like it or not. Only thing we're asking people is to be more vigilant and understand the process. Not just the BVAS, but the fact that you're going to use the BVAS for accreditation, you're going to use the BVAS to recognize that it is the real owner of a card that has come. You're also going to use the BVAS to transmit a result electronically to the INEC result viewing portal. But how many people know what they need to do to be able to get to the INEC result viewing portal? You have to register first to be able to get to that level.
Yes, Dr. Hashim. You know, resistance of a political figure, one political figure, has the potential to subdue resistance of 100 electorate. I mean, people at the grassroots, because of the enormous resources at their disposal. I don't want to call them, but we all know of a presidential candidate who actually expressed dissatisfaction, a party chairman who expressed. In fact, even the commander-in-chief, at the time, he said, Nigeria are not ripe for these BVAS. Well, not to actually, without prejudice to what they said, they also made some point that there are certain localities that have issues like electricity, which will facilitate the efficiency of BVAS. Now, putting all this side by side, how do you think this BVAS, using it or not using it, will impact on the election?
Yeah, basically, I think it will. And of course, like Faith had mentioned, it's a game changer. And we have seen a test of what BVAS would do in the elections in Osun State. The recent tribunal judgment had made it very clear because it was a case of strict liability because the tribunal judgment relied heavily on BVAS as its own baseline for that judgment. And of course, like she said, the issue of one, training of staff, INEC ad hoc staff on how to use that is very fundamental. And secondly, citizens' awareness around the procedures to adopting that. Because what the tribunal also mentioned very clearly was that a lot of people voted but did not use BVAS to do accreditation, which means that it now trapped the issue of overvoting. So that in itself became very worrisome in terms of the knowledge of people around the innovations of the new Electoral Act. Because the Electoral Act also have unique provisions, which I think a number of politicians have not acquainted themselves to. And of course, the issue of digitalization of our own democracy is actually very innovative. And like she said, INEC has been very proactive and one of the most reformed government agency, if you ask me. And since we have returned to democracy. But unfortunately, there are people who would always want to circumvent the entire procedure. And that, for me, also, again, bring to the conversation the issue of cybersecurity in these elections. A lot of people, I know too well that currently there are a number of people who will now be patronizing some hackers around how to use it. And of course, if you saw the judgment in Osun State, and of course that is the contradiction of what I had always mentioned, that look, so what becomes tenable in court and admissible? Is it the document at the polling unit or the report from the server? Which one becomes admissible when it becomes a litigation issue? And of course, again, it played out in Osun State because the secondary report from the server suggested this overvoting, but those primary infrastructures around the polling unit also gave a different, but the tribunal relied heavily and said, look, because this is it, and the report generated that they were going to rely on the report from the server, and that's a strict liability because once the law says this is what it is, you just have to go by it.
Thank you very much. Yes, in fact, Dr. Salau said, INEC is, of course, one of the agencies that truly, it has reformed. It's getting so many things right. And he reminded me of our Deputy Editor-in-Chief, of course, who also said if there is any institution in Nigeria that, reform itself within a very short time, is INEC, and it's coming to the fore. But my concern now is this technology, of course, it has its advantages, but it has, to greater extent, rendered most of us naked. Sorry to use this word, because with the touch of a button, they will actually make you incapacitated. Look at what happened today. One of the major networks, they seized the services, and almost everybody was stranded.
There was
Now,
frustration, yeah.
yes. So now, how is INEC going to escape sabotage going forward? Because on the day of election, by the touch of a button somewhere, INEC will be crippled.
Okay, so I'm quite happy that now a lot of Nigerians see that INEC has reformed itself. If we cast our minds back to 2015, a lot of Nigerians didn't give this INEC any chance at all.
Yes.
But, and this is where I want to personally commend the leadership, Professor Mahmoud Yakubu himself, for the kind of work and commitment he has.
But you can see stress in his body. When you see him on telly now, the stress is obvious.
He said that the Nigerian voter population is about 14 million more than the West African countries put together.
Oh my God.
He said that
the whole of West Africa.
Yes, yeah. 14 million more than. So you can imagine him trying to prepare for elections
for the entire
West Africa with extra 14 million people. With extra 14 million people. So all of these things we see happening is because we have INEC that is listening, especially to observer reports. We are putting in our reports, and they're listening and they're willing to bring about all of this change.
So how will it escape onslaught? Because he said that their server was attacked how many times?
Now, what they have said, the point I'm getting to is that INEC also made us understand that the technology behind the beavers is homegrown.
Okay.
It's homegrown technology. The technology
so encroachment by foreign entities.
At times, hackers, once they have access, for instance, if you are building a system, those people who build the system hold some information back so that they can use it to sabotage you.
Yes.
Now you have INEC staff, committed Nigerians, patriotic Nigerians who have put this technology and even exporting this technology to the Kenyan election that went so well. It was because we have an INEC with the INEC staff in the ICT department that went there to build their capacity. So INEC, where we are not ruling out the issue of sabotage, INEC has also come out to tell us that they have put certain things in place to help them, ensure that the beavers is not compromised. For instance, the beavers will be uploaded with the data of voters that are going to vote in a particular polling unit. There was an election where people try to steal the beavers. Stealing the beavers, what will you do with that? Stealing people's PVC, what will you do? We have come from an election where people think that causing chaos, stealing ballot boxes will be the one that will be the game changer. Now, INEC has put in place, certain safeguards in the beavers so that even where there is no network, you are able to use that. You are also able to use with the inbuilt battery.
So if I get you right, in summary, they may not necessarily rely on telecommunication.
No. Even up to 2G. Yes, 2G, where you have 2G. Like for instance, where you had this MTN, breakdown. But we have Wi-Fi, other Wi-Fis that were working, and it really worked. And
thank you very much. I want to talk in less than 1 minute on cyber bullying. This is what we are actually see in less than 1 minute because we are run out of time.
It is unfortunate that that is currently going on and is happening. A lot of young people today, if you are not supporting a particular candidate, then of course they come after you with every form of laceration. The entire Twitter lane has become an avenue for throwing words
and
like javelin.
And I see it as actually cyber terrorism.
Yeah, no, that's what it is actually.
And you are an expert, that's why I said maybe.
So it is a big issue, and of course one of the concern, just like you mentioned, the issue of cyber security from security agencies seem to be very weak because what is their capability and capacity to monitor that space? They do not have it, and for me that is the major challenge that we have.
I hope they get it right. You have a vote on this?
I just say that the individuals, the first thing is first to country, loyalty to country, and ensuring that we have a country that is sustained after the elections. Because after election, there's life.
Absolutely.
People don't have to die. The politicians you die for, after elections, they will cross carpet. That's as simple as that.
Thank you for this word on the marble. Faith Mwadishi, Executive Director of CTA, for coming to the program and your informed perspective.
Thank
Dr. Salahuddin Hashim, Security and Counter-Terrorism Consultant. We thank you for coming to the program.
Thank you very much for having me.
And that's a wrap on today's program. You must do well to collect your permanent voters card and make commitment to vote in the forthcoming election to guarantee a better future for all of us. Thanks for watching, and do join us again. I'm Hamza Idris.